the lane. 15-10. Touchdown, Chargers. What's up, guys? Welcome into a Week 9 edition of Chargers Weekly. Back from the bye here with Matt Money Smith. Money, I think everybody needed the bye. How was your bye?
Well, my bye selfishly was great. It happened to land on my daughter's homecoming out on the East Coast. So we had a Monday night game, we had a home game for my middle daughter's parents' weekend up at Cal Poly SLO, and then ended up having the bye week for my oldest daughter who goes to Dartmouth. So that's a heck of a long trip. So it was nice to squeeze those two in on back-to-back weekends. Really enjoyed it. I assume you had a great weekend as well. I saw the photos of you and the twins, and obviously with it being Halloween and stuff. Worked out very well, selfishly, for those of us that work for the team and lose all of our weekends for 18 of 19 weeks.
Sundays are at a premium, right? So it was nice to. It's like the one Sunday a year you get to sit on the couch and watch Red Zone and be a fan for a day. And we're back at it now, man. Back from the bye, Chargers 4-3, Falcons on deck. Speaking of Red Zone, that Falcons-Panthers game was insane last week. It looked like the Panthers were going to win it. Didn't Eddie Pinheiro miss a field goal against the Chargers when he was a member of the Bears in 2019? Yeah.
Sure did. They're at Soldier Field.
He misses that 48-yard extra point after the 15-yard penalty. Then he misses a 33-yarder in regulation that would have put the Panthers really right in the mix in the NFC South. But now the Falcons 4-4. They're alone in that division.
First place.
Yeah, not a very good division, but we'll get into that matchup. But I want to start with this trade deadline money. Were you surprised the Chargers didn't make a move? Did you think it was necessary that they had to make a move? Or is it just a matter of getting guys back towards the end of the year and trying to play good football with what you got?
I think there's so much nuance to that question. Not knowing, what, and look, I've said this before, like, you can make the finances work, and that's like Brandon Cooks, you got to take on $18 million of guaranteed money next year, so there's things like that. But, you can convert salary to signing bonus. You can extend, like, there's ways to work that. You look at what the Dolphins did, trading for Bradley Chubb and immediately handing him a $110 million contract after giving Tyreek Hill the richest wide receiver contract, after all those free agent signings they had in the offseason. So you can do it. I mean, it can be done. Then you got to ask, what's the draft capital that's required in order, there's a couple names that, I thought would really help this team. Brandon Cooks, we talked about it before the Houston game. Like, to me, he's just you need speed on this team. We talked about it last week on the bye week and just what's inhibiting this offense. There's no speed. It's just every defense is content to, hey, if you can beat us deep, go ahead. We don't think you can. So I think, with Robbie Anderson going to the Cardinals a couple weeks ago for a 6th and a 7th, you got to worry about injury guarantees the following year. If he gets hurt, $12 million kicks in, all that stuff. But you can make all that work. Yeah. So I guess, ultimately, to answer your question, yes. I think considering Mike is down for a while, Keenan's hamstring has proven to be a real issue instead of a minor injury. I would have really liked to see them. I would have really liked to have seen them acquire a receiver, particularly someone with speed. And again, that's just me not knowing, what was being requested in a give back. What trade picks are you sending back to Houston for Cooks, or what kind of injury guarantees or what kind of contract demands is Robbie Anderson making if he's going to come to your team, considering he was a bit of a malcontent in Carolina. Like, all that stuff I'm not privy to, but just to answer your question, I would have really have liked to have seen them acquired a pass rusher and a wide receiver. I think this team is good enough. I think they are good enough to get into the playoffs. And if they are getting healthy by the end of the year, I would hate to see them miss the postseason because this middle stretch where they have just been ravaged by injuries has cost them a couple games, and they end up missing the playoffs by a game or two. And then, we're sitting in week 18, and Joey Bosa's healthy, and Keenan's healthy, and Mike's healthy, and Rashawn Slater is ready to come back. And it's like, it's just, I think that's where the frustration comes in. It's like, man, they need help these next 3-4 weeks to try to go 500 over the next 4 games.
Yeah, these next 3 games at Atlanta, at San Francisco, and then home for Kansas City.
Nightmare.
Money, this offense, right? It doesn't sound good with Keenan for this week. We know Mike's going to be out. So the wide receiving core, if Josh Palmer plays, who just got out of concussion protocol, it's Palmer, it's DeAndre Carter, it's Michael Bandy, it's Jason Moore. You mentioned the speed a couple of weeks ago and last week too, and there's no speed on the field. I wonder what Joe Lombardi can do to kind of maybe change how they play offense over these next couple of weeks, knowing that you don't have your best deep threat and maybe your best receiver in Mike Williams and your 1 and 1A in Keenan Allen. And you can give Austin the ball a bunch of times, but, I mean, you can't give it to him 35 times, right? So how do you make this offense work? Do you make Spiller more featured? Do you give Michelle more carries? Do you try to be a run-heavy offense and, take your shots when you can? It's kind of tricky based on the current personnel that they have.
Yeah, I think, look, I wish I had the answer to that, and I feel bad for Joe because I have no idea how you do it. This is a defense, and you saw P.J. Walker last week light him up for 350 yards, and DJ Moore have a career day. So it's a bad pass defense. And you've got Justin Herbert back there, but now Justin's trying to develop chemistry in the middle of the season with Jason Moore, Michael Bandy, DeAndre Carter, without his 2 go-to guys out there, without Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, 2 dudes he implicitly trusts. And I think we saw that in the Seattle game where Bandy's getting open, but something's off. Like the pass is either too far in front of him or Bandy's not able to come back or like he's just flat. He's not flattening out the route enough or he is flattening out. Like it just seemed like something was a little bit off with those 2. And I think that's a chemistry thing that he clearly has with Keenan and Mike Williams. So with Gerald Everett, it's like there's an issue every week. There's a drop or there's just like a misread or you think about the pick 6 against Kansas City. Like every game there's been something like that. Ball ricochets off his hands for the interception. That relationship hasn't quite materialized. So I think that's what people don't quite understand is, you can't just throw guys out there and they're ready to go. It takes a second for a quarterback and a receiver to get into sync. And I guess that's flies into the face of me saying, hey, go get a receiver. Well, I'm talking about getting a speed receiver. I'm talking about getting someone who can just go.
Stretch the field,
and open things up for Austin, for Gerald Everett, for those underneath routes. And that's the thing, like, yes, is DeAndre Carter fast? Yes, but he's not a physical receiver. You can't, same thing with Bandy. Like when Joe tries to play them on the outside, when Coach Lombardi tries to play them on the outside, they can't get off press. That's just not the kind of receivers they are. They're not big enough. They're not strong enough. So that's where the problem comes in. We're still talking about Josh Palmer's single game last year when he filled in for Keenan. We're still waiting for Josh to emerge. We thought this was going to be the year, especially as a third receiver, and he looked so darn good in the preseason and training camp, or I should say in training camp. So there's just so many questions around, and I don't think people realized what that injury to Jalen Guyton meant for this team and how dramatically it would affect the way their offense looks. I mean, like when you look at it, it's crazy to think you have Justin Herbert as your quarterback. And Chris, when I go completed air yards per completion, Justin Herbert is 32nd in the league, 4.4. To put that in perspective, Tua is at 8.4. Josh Allen is at 7.4. The guy we're going to see, Marcus Mariota, is at 7.1. Jacoby Brissett is at 6.9. Russell Wilson is at 6.5. Like 4.4 is anemic. Like that is like that, and that speaks to the issue they're having with lack of explosive plays. Completed air yards per pass attempt, he's 32nd. And you look at Jalen Hurts, he's got double the completed air yards per pass attempt. Like Geno Smith is in the top 5, Josh Allen, Tua, like those are the guys who are up there. And you think about those offenses and how many points they're putting up and what they look like, and then how far back. And the other thing that's weird is, Herbert's not getting sacked. It's the number 1 team in the league in sacks. It's like, so what's not happening?
I was going to ask you, what do you attribute it to? Is it speed of wide receiver? Is it Justin and his injury maybe? Is it the offensive line shakeups week in and week out? Like, where would you go in terms maybe the speed at receiver, number one? And I just feel like Justin's still battling through something. We don't really hear about it much, but we were told when this injury occurred that this was going to be something that's not going to go away anytime soon.
I think the answer to that is yes. All of those. Yeah, it's all of them. And yet, look, Justin doesn't look right. There's just no two ways about it. He doesn't look right, and I think it's, it's not trying to say, hey, what's going on? I think we know what's going on. The guy took a shot, and he's got fractured rib cartilage, and it probably hurts to throw every time he drops back there. He lost his left tackle. His interior line has been, his center, his most trusted offensive lineman, has been dealing with knee issues and had a vicious bout of food poisoning that kept him out a week, and then clearly was not himself in the game against Seattle. Zion has kind of regressed a little bit after starting out the season strong. Matt Filer, I don't think, has played as well as he did last year. And Trey has the MCL. Like, every single offensive lineman has an issue. So I get it, man. You got fractured rib cartilage. You don't want to be taking shots, because you want to keep playing. So I think there's myriad issues that have led to one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL since Justin took over in week 2, 2+ seasons ago, to now becoming one of the most check down heavy offenses, least explosive offenses in the league. And I'm assuming they did some serious self-scouting, through this 2-week window to try to figure out, okay, do we have to scheme it up? What do we have to just show Justin the film to say, hey, look, you're all right. I know you're where the clock is in your head because of who's in front of you, but here, let's watch this together. Here's this route. DeAndre's coming open here. If you just kind of climb a little bit and shift there, or let's use your legs a little bit more. Let's roll out. Let's do some designed runs to keep because Justin has not run at all this year. Yeah. Like, you think about what Josh Allen is doing and how his legs are just a ridiculous threat. And obviously what Marcus Mariota is doing in Atlanta for Arthur Smith, we're going to see that firsthand. Like, Justin can do that. So I think that's...
Remember that Pittsburgh game, Money?
Yeah.
Where they gave it to him and he took it. Every time he took it.
Every time. Mahomes does it. Like, that's one of the greatest weapons that Justin has. I mean, he's an incredible athlete. He's fast. He's elusive. And he just so happens to be 6'6", 240 pounds. So, like, that's got to come into play. I think some of those a lot more of those RPOs have got to come into play, where you're using that threat of his legs to maybe that's how, you can get the defense to be on their heels. Because to me, defenses have been on their toes, all season long, since the second half of the Kansas City game and the rib injury.
There has to be a response coming out of the bye offensively, and we just don't know what that's going to be. How are they going to come out against the Falcons? Do you try to match the Falcons with a running game, with Austin and Sony, similar to what you did in Cleveland maybe a few weeks ago? I don't know if that's the answer. Josh Palmer being relied upon to be the number one guy when you don't have a Keenan and Mike on the field, that's something that we just don't know about. And then you flip it to the Falcons. Man, Arthur Smith is a wizard offensively, calling plays. Mariota is using his legs. DJ did a great film room on just 4 Mariota running plays, and how Derwin's going to have to be that guy to kind of sniff those out and stop him. Plus, they haven't used Kyle Pitts very well or Drake London very well. Pitts in particular, but I think Pitts had 5 for 80 and a touchdown last week. You don't want to see him get going against the Chargers.
Yeah, he's come on. He's definitely come on. I'm a huge Arthur Smith guy. Absolutely love what he was able to do in Tennessee. You think about, just the career of both Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. Henry was being, to some degree, labeled as a bust before Arthur really got his hands on him when LaFleur went to Green Bay and Arthur took over as OC. That's when you really saw the emergence of the King Henry version of Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill's career was resurrected under Arthur Smith. Now you're seeing Marcus Mariota and his career. I mean, guy was just the offensive player of the week. He's got, when you look at, when I'm doing my game prep, I just saw it. I got to go back to it. Like, you think about now that he's getting comfortable and settling in to this offense and getting sort of his head around it and figuring out what Coach Smith is asking him to do. Mariota is, in the last 4 weeks, his passer rating, Tua's number 1, Josh Allen number 2, Joe Burrow number 3, Jalen Hurts number 4, Marcus 5. Like Kyle Pitts has emerged as a legitimate weapon. So like they're starting to figure it out. They're starting to get comfortable with what, Coach Smith is asking them to do. And the fact that Cordero Patterson's coming back, and you got Algier, who really kind of was able to get his feet wet. He's a bruising back. And we obviously know what this Chargers defense has looked like against the run. There was a temporary fix there for the first couple weeks, and it has since completely fallen apart. Back to the dregs, 27th against the run, and they've pretty much allowed an explosive run in every single game they've played this season.
Look at just the distribution here of rushing yards. So Patterson was out for the last few weeks. He still leads the team with 340 rushing yards. Algier 324, Mariota 280, Huntley 265. So you don't know who's getting the ball, and they're all running it pretty efficiently. 5.9, 3.9, 5.1, 4.6 a pop. Mariota, something has clicked. He looks like Oregon Duck Mariota. And I know that Arthur Smith and him had a relationship in Tennessee. We saw Mariota a couple years ago on Thursday Night Football when Carr went out early in that game late in the season. He's playing really good ball right now. And, I think when we saw the schedule come out and coming out of by going to Atlanta, it's like, all right, man, this is a game you absolutely need to take care of. This is going to be a very tough football game for the Chargers. Defensively, when you're down Rumph and Bosa, Kyle Van Noy on one side, Khalil Mack on the other, every single week it seems like there's been a big explosive run for a touchdown, and they got a bunch of guys who are capable of doing that.
Yeah, it's you mentioned it, and even pretty much since Joey went down, they've really struggled to find that pass rush. It's really only come on Drew Tranquill blitzes, Derwin James blitzes, Rumph nor Van Noy have been able to fill that void and give you any pass rush whatsoever. We've seen it from Morgan Fox. I think he's played very well on the interior in terms of providing some pass rush. The problem is with Mariota now, you've got to set an edge. You've got to keep him contained because, like you said, he's got 200 in rush yard, 280 rush yards. So, you got issues there. This is not going to be an easy team to defend, not with the threat of their run game. So you got to, and we know, like I said, the issues that this defense has had against the run. So you've got to play that stout. You're going to have Derwin in the box. And now you're talking about Drake London and that big body. You're down J.C. Jackson. Kyle Pitts, who, like I said, has emerged. And the idea would be just to do what you do with Travis Kelce, right? All right, Derwin, there's Kyle Pitts. Go get him. But I think because of the issues they've had against the run, my guess is they're going to probably play. And that's the thing, you can't play a lot of dime. It's hard to put a Lowy out there, and try to sort of put a shell on it that way. Just that's not going to work. It's a tough matchup. It's a really tough matchup for this Chargers defense. And you know what? It's been a tough matchup for every defense. Look what they did and granted the 49ers were down darn near their whole team, but I mean,
sure.
They doubled up the 49ers. They were able to put up some, the points weren't there, but they put up some serious yards against the Bengals. Those are good defenses. The Saints, they put up 26 on. The Rams, they put up 27. This is an offense that can move the ball and score points. And
they went to Seattle and beat Seattle too, didn't they, earlier in the year?
Yeah, absolutely. Went up there, beat them 27-20, put 27 on them. So I think to your point, Chris, what I think this game, if Chargers are going to win this game, I think it's going to look like Cleveland. I think this is going to have to be a 31-20. This is going to have to be a Justin Herbert special. This is, I think that's just that's the path to victory that I see, is that this is hey, Justin got 2 weeks to rest those ribs. He's a lot more comfortable. And even though he's down his receivers, he's just such a special quarterback. We talked about it. You make, average receivers good receivers great, and I think it's a game where he makes average receivers good and does some special things to get this team a win with Austin Eckler, again, like a 28-25, a 31-28, 35-31 style game is what this thing's probably going to have to look like for the Chargers to come back, with a victory.
So coming out of this bye, 4-3, and Money, I'm just looking at the conference right now, and things are kind of clearing up already, right? And we're only in week 9. I mean, Chargers, if the season ended today, you're the 7th seed. You got Miami and New York in front of you at 5-3. Baltimore is looking pretty good right now. And with this Jamar Chase injury, I could see them maybe pulling away. I think they have a pretty soft schedule coming up. KC 5-2, Tennessee 5-2, who you play later, 6-1 Bills. And then the wild cards, the Patriots, the Bengals. I mean, the Colts do not look good. They're 3-4-1. But you beat Cleveland, you beat Denver. These next 3 games are so important for the Chargers, man. If you can go 2-1 and get to like 6-4 and just kind of hit Arizona, hit the Raiders, and then you get into that stretch with Tennessee and Miami, you're in good shape. But like, typically we say, these NFC games, if you drop them, not the worst thing in the world. Now when you're 4-3 and you're kind of in this jumbled mix in the AFC, you need every win you can get.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, so let's just look at the way that the conference is shaken out, right? So your division leaders, Bills in the East, Titans in the South, Chiefs in the West, Ravens in the North, all right? So those 4. And I feel comfortable saying I think that holds. I think that ends up holding. I think those are your division winners. Now you ask yourself, are you better than the Jets? You feel, especially since they lost Breece Hall, their offensive line, they just lost Elijah Vera Tucker. There's so many questions about Zach Wilson and decision-making. You got disgruntled Denzel Mims and Elijah Moore who had wanted to be traded at the deadline and weren't. So, yeah, I think obviously the Jets are in play. Do you feel like you're better than the Dolphins? No. I think just if we're being honest with one another, no. That's the most explosive offense going right now that's not in Buffalo, and they just added Bradley Chubb.
You could prove us wrong in a month, right? When they
I just mean right now. Right now.
When
they're healthy, it's a different conversation. I'm just talking about right now. Can you maintain your slot? That's kind of what I'm getting at. If they're the number 7 right now, can you maintain this slot? Can you move up or do you slide back? You look what's behind you. Patriots are interesting. They're frisky. I think you feel comfortable saying that. The Bengals are, after a slow start, are starting to hit a little bit of a rhythm, but then you see, I think the Bengals are very similar to the Chargers. They have a great week, and you're like, okay, here we go. Now they're back. And then all of a sudden they have a game like they had against the Browns, and you're like, what the hell was that? So I think the Bengals and the Chargers are in that exact same conversation. You brought up the Colts. The one that's, the win against the Browns is going to prove to be huge because now you're 2 weeks away from getting Deshaun Watson back.
Yep.
And you know what that run game looks like. The defense has been a mess for the most part, but that's where we now start going, okay, if they're in the 7 spot, can the Jets slide back? Well, now let's see. You got 2 slots to play with, and we're talking about the Browns, the Bengals, the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Chargers. I think that's where we start to kind of have this conversation of, how do they hang on? Right now, it is fingernails on that cliff, hanging on to that 7 spot, just a half a game ahead of the Patriots right now. So, and a minus 25-point differential. Patriots and Bengals both have plus differentials, and had really slow starts to the season. The Chargers, have had that 3-game win streak. Can they rediscover some of that magic?
And fans may be frustrated with the way that they're winning or the way they're losing, frankly, right now. But if you hang on, you can win ugly in Atlanta. You can win ugly in San Francisco. If you're in the mix and Keenan Allen is back at full strength and Mike Williams is back at full strength and Joey Bosa comes back at full strength, which I think would be huge for this defense, it's a 17-game season for a reason, man. There's ebbs and flows. If you can get these guys back towards the back half of the year, this team, frankly, played a lot better last year than they're playing right now and missed the playoffs.
100%.
They could be 8-9, 9-8, not playing their best ball, and still make the playoffs and still get some of these guys back. So that's why I find it so fascinating about this year, Money, because outside Buffalo and Philly and maybe you put KC and Dallas right below that, it's a very average NFL in 2022.
Yeah, parity. It's been a year of parity. No doubt. I think the one, and I think just kind of going back to the trade, question, I think you look at the teams that believe they're contenders. The Vikings add Hawkinson. The Eagles add Robert Quinn. The Dolphins add Bradley Chubb. The Bills add Naheem Hines. The Chiefs go out and get Kadarius Toney. The Ravens get Roquan Smith. The Jets get James Robinson to fill in for Breece Hall. Like, I think that's, sort of where I go back to your trade question. I think that's where, like, hey, it would have been pretty cool to see them say, you know what, it's a good team through 6 quarters, man. We were feeling good about this. We were actually feeling good after 8 quarters, even though they lost that game to the Chiefs. Felt like the refs completely robbed them of 2 interceptions in that game. So not even 6 quarters. Through 8 quarters, you're like, hey, man, this is a good team. This looks like one of the best teams in football. And then injuries just hit. And like you said, it's all about sustaining until those guys start coming back. And if Bosa's going to be 8 weeks, well, that's going to be by Arizona. And like you said, these next 3 games, if you can figure out, the San Francisco game's the one that I'm really concerned about, just because they're healthy on the defensive front, and with Christian McCaffrey now and Trent Williams is back like that, they're getting healthy at a bad time for the Chargers. I think is the best way to put it. So that's why I just think this Atlanta game is so critical. I think it is so critical, where you're not looking at a losing streak, and sliding back and falling under 500 and stuff. You get to 5-3, and now you got 2 games to play with just to stay at 500 until you start getting those reinforcements back and adding, and it's not even necessarily adding guys that aren't out there, but now Trey Pipkins feels back to his normal self at the beginning of the year when he was, really playing really good right tackle. Corey Linsley is back to 100%. Justin Herbert is back to 100%. Josh Kelly is back out there. Like, that's what I'm getting at. It's not – I know maybe I sound like a broken record and I'm talking in circles a little bit on the pod, but, like, that's why these next 3 weeks are so critical, because we know these guys are coming back. And as long as you can stay in the fight and in the hunt for the playoffs until they get back, I feel good. We're talking about, oh, this is a gnarly stretch. Okay, well, if you can make it through it, then you get Arizona, and then you get Vegas, and you get Tennessee at home. You get the Colts. Where are the Rams going to be in Week 17 with all the tumult there? They're in Tampa this week. They could be 3-5. Yeah. By the time at this time next week, and 3 games back after having been swept in the division by the 49ers and not having played the Seahawks yet. Like the back end of the season could really work in the Chargers' favor if they can just figure out a way. And they did. Look, they figured out how to win ugly against Denver. They figured out how to win a shootout in Cleveland. They figured out how to hang on, after blowing a 24-point lead in Houston. Like, they were able to win ugly. So win pretty. Win pretty in Atlanta, score 31 points, have everybody say that's the Justin Herbert we remember and we have not seen in 4 or 5 weeks.
I'm so glad you mentioned some of these other guys, because we seem to focus in on Keenan and Mike and Rashawn for good reason. Joey Bosa, J.C. Jackson, a lot of these big names that have been out. But, Pipkins gutted it out in Cleveland. And Corey has been in and out of the lineup and has gutted it out. So there's guys who Josh Kelly, another one, who was a great number 2 to Austin in that Cleveland game. These are pieces that have been in and out of the lineup or haven't been 100% that you're hoping will get to full strength in coordination with these guys coming back, that, the big names that we talk about. So it's not just the big names. There's been guys that have been playing through injury that may not be at full strength or have been in and out of the lineup, which causes further, I think, maybe disruption on an offense or a defense. So, right now, Chris Rumph is another example, a guy who depth is going to be tested now with just Van Noy and Khalil as your starters on the edge.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, and again, no reinforcements, and that's kind of where the whole, Robert Quinn was traded for a 6th or whatever it was. It said, like, that's sort of where that trade deadline, I think, for fans comes in. Like, how, okay, let's go through your draft picks this year. Your most successful draft pick out there is the second you traded for Khalil Mack. I know it cost you $22 million, but, like, JT Woods has not been active for a game. Isaiah Spiller has 1 carry on the year. Jamari Sawyer has played great, your 6th-round pick. But, Xander Horvath has been, touchdowns back-to-back weeks to start the season, but not necessarily an integral part. Dean and Jasir have, had 1 critical play together against the Broncos that led them to the win. But you kind of see what I'm saying. You got to be careful you don't value your draft picks too much.
Yeah.
That expecting all 7 of those to make an impact, for a team that's really built to win right now. And I think that's where maybe some of that frustration came from. But again, it takes it takes a partner. You've got to find that partner that wants to work with you. And, unfortunately, it's not like there were 30 trades and the Chargers were the only team that didn't do it. I think there were 11, and so it's not like, and look, some of them I didn't even like, like the idea of expending, a second for Chase Claypool, that was awfully rich.
Yeah, that was interesting.
But at the same time, I get it. They need to develop Justin Fields. Wins and losses be damned. In Chicago this year, you've got to develop that quarterback. You traded 2 firsts. He's shown you flashes. You've got to give him opportunity. So, like, when you say, oh, what about Chase Claypool? Yeah, they paid a premium because their quarterback needs wide receivers. They have to evaluate him, and figure out, where he is. So, like, each exchange is its own entity. It's not like the Chargers aren't in this vacuum where, oh, well, they could have gotten Claypool for that second or what, that's not how it works. It's not necessarily how it works. So, it's, again, they're going into Atlanta with Jason Moore, DeAndre Carter, Michael Bandy, and Josh Palmer. The good part of that is the quarterback's Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And as long as Joe Lombardi and Justin and Shane Day and, Chris Beatty are all able to get on the same page because they had 2 weeks to prepare for it and get some chemistry, then I've got more faith in it than I would were somebody else playing quarterback, and then hopefully, Mike, this is week 2. Now you're talking about maybe Mike getting back for the Arizona game. Hopefully Keenan gets 3 weeks of rest here if he's not going to play in Atlanta and that hamstring is finally ready to go. And you can try to hit some rhythm, and close out the season strong and just get into the tournament. Now all of a sudden you're healthy and the Chargers become the proverbial team that nobody wants to play because everybody's now back out there. And we look like, they look like they did in week 2 against Kansas City, like a freaking buzzsaw.
Let's get to the rookie conversation real quick because you're right. 3s and 4s should be making an impact on a football team. JT Woods, we haven't seen. Isaiah Spiller got 1 touch in that Seattle game. And I'm looking at the other side of Seattle and seeing guys like Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant and the 2 tackles and Kenneth Walker. These guys are all contributing right now. Do you think JT Woods can make a difference at some point during the second half of the season, especially with the depth being tested in the secondary? And is it time to give Isaiah Spiller a little bit more run, especially when you're down speed at the receiver position and you're down Joshua Kelly, and you saw the success that you had running the football a few weeks ago? Maybe Spiller can fill that void. And by the way, he can catch the ball out of the backfield too.
Yeah, he's going to have to, Chris. I mean, because really Sony has been good at short yardage. That's really it. Sony has not been explosive. He's not been really a threat in the passing game. He's had a couple receptions that have been, solid receptions. But to me, he is. It's 3rd and 1. And let's go get 2 yards. Like, that's when they've really used him. So Isaiah has got to become a part of this running attack. He has to, like Josh Kelly was, and how he had emerged and how much better it looked with him out there. But, like, to me, it's so much bigger than that. I think it's blocking it. The front is getting no push. They're getting pushed back, and that's the issue with running the ball. 1, 2, I think it's scheme. I would love to see, like, give me some DeAndre Carter in motion. Just flip him some of those, Patrick Mahomes special shovel passes when he's kind of streaking across, or give him some jet sweeps, just to show it, just to put it out there. So I think that's the sort of stuff that I expect to see in Atlanta with the extra week of prep and just kind of. And that's the other thing. Like when you're watching these other teams, when you get the week off and you see what the Cowboys are doing with Tony Pollard and what Dak's doing from a running standpoint at the quarterback position, or what the Eagles are doing with A.J. Brown and how Nick, our old friends Nick and Shane, are scheming it up, out there with Jalen Hurts. Like you're seeing some of these teams and you're like, man, that's like, okay, let's see some of that. Let's get some of that going here. What Geno and Pete Carroll are doing up in Seattle, with, like you said, it's all rookies. Yeah. And it's amazing what one rookie class can do for a team, because you think about the Richard Sherman class with Bobby Wagner and Richard and what that can mean for a team. And like, you see it. Now look, some classes take longer to develop, takes 2-3 years. Maybe they have players in front of them. I think the idea with JT was, you allow Derwin to play that money, that star, and JT and Nas can both play in that too high shell up top. And so you end up playing a lot of dime with Derwin as that, that dime backer. But, with how badly it's been against the run and just the inability to get push against the run and just the way Kenneth Walker ran over him last week, I think is certainly alarming, and it's hard to envision that. So I think, going back to your original point of, should these rookies be making more of an impact? I think when you look at some other teams, yeah, but also who's in front of them, and I think when Josh was healthy, we felt good about Austin and Josh being your 1-2 punch when Kelly had found that rhythm. Again, I feel like, Sony has not quite shown what we had hoped he might show when he was signed as a free agent. So I might have put Spiller in there and just given him a look a little bit. But, corners might be asked to do something now. Dean Leonard and Josh Hayre with the injury to JC, they may be asked to get out there for a couple reps, and that's where we may see them to come into play. But again, Xander Horvath had touchdowns the first 2 weeks, and Jamari Sawyer's been great. Has been great as a fill-in 6th rounder for Rashawn Slater and not getting too leaky and having the line completely break down. So that's been a great pick as well.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, Sawyer goes in for a reason because Slater's out. And,
right.
Spiller, we may see. Maybe this back half of the season is going to be the impact that this team needs. I guess we'll get out of here on keys to the game, and you kind of said it. Like, this needs to be a Justin Herbert special offensively. Defensively, it'll have to be a Derwin James special. I told you DJ kind of broke down plays of Derwin kind of sniffing out the run. But with Kyle Pitts there too, I mean, you may have to play Derwin everywhere. I mean, what do you think the key is defensively? Because the run game, it starts there. But when you have weapons like Drake London and Kyle Pitts just out there, you always have to account for them.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of the same thing with the Seattle game. It's, hey, let's just get some pressure on Geno. Like, okay, if he can get the reads, if you're blitzing and it's Drew or it's Kenneth or it's Derwin and he's able to get the ball out and they beat you, fine. But I just felt like defensively they allowed him a clean pocket and all kinds of time. And they weren't able to slow down Kenneth Walker. And Geno was just taking those 10, 12. I mean, think about those third downs. They had 3rd and 12s, 3rd and 15s, and they're just rushing 4 and no one can get home. There's just no pass rush opposite Khalil. He's getting double teamed. And I think, to me, defensively, I just like to see him get more aggressive. I would really like to see them get more aggressive. Drew is so good at timing up his blitzes. Kenneth, when he's been given a single assignment, hey, go here fast. He's been good this year. I think, Derwin is exceptional at timing up his blitzes and getting to the quarterback and being able to get by chips from the tight end or the running back to get sacks or create pressures or hurries. So defensively, that's what I'd like to see. If Mariota is able to beat you, he's never been the most accurate quarterback. I know his accuracy has been way up this year, but just he's got enough of a resume that he's had some accuracy issues. I would love to see that. Don't let them pick you apart. Don't let them dominate time of possession. Don't let them deflate you because they're converting 3rd and 12s and 3rd and 16s like we've seen regularly this year. Go get them. And if they get you, they get you. So I think defensively that's what I'd like to see. But ultimately, I'm looking at it right now, Chris. I mean, points, Chargers 31, Falcons 29. Yards, Chargers 20th, the Falcons 31st. Passing yards, Falcons 32nd. Scrimmage yards per play, Chargers 29th, Falcons 31st. Like,
it ain't pretty.
Score points, man. Get out there and take advantage, because they didn't take advantage, of the Seattle run defense that was allowing 170 yards per game. They did nothing. Yeah. You gotta take advantage of a team's weakness, and through 8 games, that's what the Falcons are. It's halfway through the season. They've told you they cannot stop the pass. So go on out there and get it, and let's see if you can win a shootout.
Yeah, maybe a big day for Palmer and Gerald Everett.
Yeah,
and Austin coming out of the backfield. You never know, right?
100%. I think it's going to have to be if they're going to come back here with a win. And And I fully believe they can. I 100% believe that this is a winnable game. Yes, the Falcons are 4-4 and in first place, but when you look at their season, 27-26, 31-27, 27-23, 23-20, 21-15. You see what I'm getting at? They're all tight games because their defense can't stop anyone. Yeah. So you're going to be in this game. You should be in this game. And, Herbert with the extra week to get those ribs healthy, I got faith that this is going to be that Justin Herbert special, and he's going to remind a lot of people why he's being talked about as, hey, if you had the number one pick of any quarterback in the league for the next 10 years, who do you want? I feel like it's going to be that kind of game.
Yeah, and it's going to have to be, right? Without Keenan and Mike, if Justin can show, hey, we can get this done on my shoulders.
Yeah.
You get to 5-3 in today's NFL. 5-3 is pretty good in today's NFL, especially in the AFC. We'll see what Joe Lombardi cooks up offensively. Money, looking forward to it, man. I'll see you this weekend and see if the Bolts can get back in the win column, get to 5-3 before another NFC game, NFC West Sunday Night Football against the Niners. We'll get into that next week, but Atlanta this Sunday.
Exactly. Just as long as I don't see you at the Varsity at 9 a.m. with one of those greasy burgers because we stayed out too late on Saturday night, we'll be good.
Yeah, that would be a problem, right?
Yes, it would be.
All right, for Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly, Week 9.